Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritual Boujee Astrology, and we are going to take a look at the major astrological transits for December of 2024. Oh, December, December, December. Oh my goodness. There's so much to December. Oh, before we do any type of breakdown of the month ahead, I did want to remind everybody that I am still running the new client pricing special all the way until the end of the year. Now, what that means is if you're coming to me for the first time, I don't charge you a full rate. We set up a time to meet one on one. We go over your personal astrology, your medical astrology, whatever's going on in your relationship, whatever's going on in your family dynamics, whatever you need to look at in regards to what is particularly important for you, back and forth. And then afterwards, you get a copy of your recorded session. An hour long with me is $35. A 90-minute session with me is $50. And then again, those are discounted rates that are good for everybody until the end of the year. So just putting that out there. Now, going into the month of December, I got to recap some things. I got to bring some things from previous episodes into the forefront because they're starting to apply in a much heavier tone going into December. So first things first, if you thought you were busy in November, it's about to get busier. It's going to get a little bit more intense. It's going to be a little bit more disruptive. It's going to be a little bit more fun. Sure. Exciting. Yeah. Chaotic. Yeah. Volatile. Yes. Frustrating. Absolutely. It's about to kick up a notch in December. And it's quite literally how we're going to start the month. There's more coming through. And I want to bring forth again some of the things from past episodes and reiterate them now. Some of the things we started at the beginning of this year, rule number one, some of the things that we started at the beginning of the year were not meant to stick. The things that did not stick for a lot of people throughout the last part of October going into November, y'all were scrambling, trying to figure something out and trying to go into something new. For some people, some of the things that we did start at the beginning of the year did stick. And everything through the month of October and November is like, we're trying to take something up to the next level. And whether you are scrambling, trying to figure out something new, or you're taking something to the next level, all of this is about to be tested, deeply tested, frustratingly tested. And now, rule number three. Now, something I said back at the beginning of October when Mars entered shadow was this is not a good time for relationships because going into new relationships will have an imprint of frustration and volatility that will stay there throughout the entire relationship. And if you go back to the month ahead forecast for October, I explained this already because I've done it for you already. I did it myself personally. And I told a little bit of my story. The imprint will follow you if you go into new relationships. Now, the thing about why I said that in October is more and more people were starting to align with the people that are about to test them. They were putting things into place that are going to become levels of frustrations, that are going to be hurdles, that are going to be limitations. I started warning back then because that's when the little things pop up. The little people that are going to be a part of the problem started to pop up. We needed to start paying attention to the people that were coming through since the beginning of October, the situations that have presented themselves since the beginning of October, the meetings you've had, the agreements that you've made, the steps that you've taken forward since the beginning of October. They have volumes. They will have a lot of things to do in the coming months ahead. And a lot of the volume is going to reach high peaks starting in December. Now, why is that? We start the month in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. In the middle of a Mercury retrograde, we will start the month with a Mars retrograde. Mars turns retrograde. Now, what's interesting about a Mars retrograde is this is not a common thing. If you have a Mars retrograde in your natal chart, congratulations. Less than 5% of the population has that planet in retrograde in their chart. He stays direct for 22 months, turns retrograde anywhere between 65 and 85 days, depending on the sign that we're talking about. And then he turns direct again and stays direct for nearly 2 years. 22 months is a long time. So at the timelines that he does go retrograde, we are talking about the god of war having his energy far more close to us. That's why it looks like a retrograde in the sky. The intensity is more profound, more hypnotic, more infuriating, more frustrating, more intense, and more likely to test you. And the new things that we start to do in a Mars retrograde very likely are not going to stick. And if you're going into a relationship knowing that you just want it to be a one-night stand, boy, howdy, have a great time. Ride them hard, put them away wet. Do not get into your feelings. There you go. But if you're going into connections wanting an actual relationship, this ain't the time, the place, or the energy. Trust and believe. I've already done it for you. And you don't want that volatility imprint to stay in those relationships, because all of us are trying to get into a better mindset of not staying connected to toxic patterns, breaking away from them. But there's something about Mars retrogrades that can bring a lot of toxic patterns to the forefront, toxic situations to the forefront, disruptive ones. Now, when you talk about Mars and you think about Mars, I only have one of two ways to look at him. It is either a disruptive, chaotic, or disruptive, pivotal. But when Mars is retrograde, pivotal is about 25%. Chaotic's more like 75%. Volatile, frustrating energy. Now, adding in the fact that, again, we are starting this month in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. Mercury in his detriment while Mars is deciding he's going to go retrograde. Some of the volatility that starts the month off is based off of a change in mindset, a change in opinions, a change in partnerships. When I say partnerships, I don't always mean an actual relationship. Sometimes I'm talking about the business stuff. The people that we commit to on a different form of paperwork. That level of partnership has drastic changes to it. And it is the changes that we are doing in the middle of the Mercury retrograde that have the deepest impact to how the Mars retrograde is going to start. Now, something else I said in previous episodes, specifically the beginning of November, was that some of the things that we started at the beginning of November were going to stick. Some of the things that we started at the beginning of November were not going to stick. And it really came down to which transit the new came in on. If the transit came in on a Mars transit, it is very likely not to stick. If the transit change is a part of the Mercury transit, the Mercury retrograde, it is likely to stick, but it has volumes, it has layers, multiple levels to make something happen, to make something stick. But for other people, the volatility and the frustration around Mars, not going to stick. And there will be arguments, and there will be tension, and there will be people quite literally by the end of December going into the first full week of January that are just throwing their hands in the air and saying, fuck it. You want to do it your way, you just go. I'm leaving. I don't want to do this way. And there will be very big splits in tides, especially when it comes to business partnerships and those types of power dynamics. People that were once in positions of power are no longer going to remain in their positions of power. And I do mean this in business sense right now. There's a lot of people that used to be the respected authority figure that has always taken care of business, that they are stepping away from companies. They are selling their companies. Mergers are happening behind the scenes that have not been officially announced to the real world. Power dynamics are changing. And a lot of people are going to have these changes impact their income, their business, their way of living. Because of these big changes within companies, it is going to force them to make disruptive action follow. And that could be stuff that impacts homes and families. And that's going to be more stuff we start to talk about in January and February. But I always start putting the Easter eggs out there ahead of time, letting you know one action is going to lead to another. Now, it's not going to all be power dynamics. The other thing about Mars going retrograde in Leo is there's going to be the negative impacts to masculinity, to the men. Sorry, guys. I know there's a bunch of you that listen to me. You've been my clients for a long time. And I'm telling you now, Mars retrogrades aren't great for you guys either. For a lot of people, the types of ways that can be seen in the month ahead can turn into something for the wrong reasons. You've been working on something for a real long time. You're about to launch something in your business. You're about to take something to the next level. And suddenly your phone gets hacked, Mercury retrograde. Certain things get leaked, found, come about, that also tests people in positions of power. The negative impact. Certain men that have been doing things a certain way, whether that's in business or in life, in your relationships, in your finances. You've had something going a certain way. You've thought you've had certain things lined out, and all of a sudden, things aren't going to feel the same. Adjustment, change to the ego, specifically for the masculine, because we're talking about Mars. Now, in a lot of ways, some of what we're going to be dealing with moving forward is not new. Based off of the outer planets, Neptune has been at this area of the sky before. Uranus has been at this area of the sky before. Saturn has been in this area of the sky before. Pluto has been in this area of the sky before. Jupiter, even in his retrograde, has been at this area of the sky before. But if we add into the effect of Jupiter to the start of the Mars retrograde, we again have something very peculiar that ties back to the last Mercury retrograde. If you've listened to me before, I've already said there is something about the Mercury retrogrades that are going to be connected. And in some ways, I've said that had to do with Jupiter being the outer planet in Gemini, in Mercury's sign. But now is the next reason. And this is going to be something that, again, is how we start the month. Now, I want to remind everybody back to the middle of August, between the 14th and the 20th. We had a conjunction between Mars and Jupiter during the last Mercury retrograde. And that conjunction between Mars and Jupiter was in a square to Saturn. Quite directly, both planets squared Saturn just within days of each other in the middle of a Mercury retrograde. And I said it back then. Some of the changes, some of the information, some of the dynamics, some of the filing, some of the documents, some of the planning, some of the agreements that we're in, they're going to come back up. And they're going to get tested right around the beginning of December. And now we're in that. The exact degree Jupiter was at when it had its conjunction to Mars is exactly where Jupiter is going to be the day Mars turns retrograde. So again, go back through your notes, go back through your logs, your appointments, your pictures, your social media posts. What was going on in that middle part of August? And don't just focus on one big thing. I get this problem all the time with you guys. You're like, well, I was arguing with him. Cool. But what else did you do? Did you get a dog? Refinance the car? Refinance the house? Did you apply for a promotion? Did you do any other change? We have to think beyond just one factor. Look at all of it. We have to look at all of the themes because so much of that timeline is about to play into the entire month of December. And we will have points of rage because something that we have previously agreed to is not going to continue. It's not sticking all the way through. One plan that we previously had is not continuing. It's not going to go all the way through. And because this previous plan was so important, was so surreal, it was so much a part of the big game and the big scheme, that once we work through some of the dynamic changes throughout this Mercury retrograde, the one that we're in as we start the month, because of so much of that dynamic is not going to work the way originally thought or originally planned, it's going to again create separations in power, separate dynamics, where one person is going to go one way and the rest will go another. And there will be separation of ties. Very big dynamic that will start to come through the second half of December and even be a part of the vibration as we get into January. A separation in dynamics. Since so much of the outer planets and so much of the sky has placements that have already been activated, we're already in motion. We're already in situations. We're already in the decisions. We're already in the agreements. We're already in the negotiations. We're already in the lawsuit. We're already in the stuff. But now we're waiting on the turn. We're waiting on the flip. We're waiting on something to reveal itself. And I do truly feel like there will be some kind of verdict, decision, or something that gets announced or debuted, especially based off of the transits, that immediately impact the start of that Mars retrograde. And there will be people that are infuriated just as much as there will be people that are empowered for change, for a new direction, for a new dynamic, for a new possibility. There's a lot of chaos to Mars retrogrades. And that's a big part of the dynamic throughout the month of December. And if we use that energy wisely, that chaos can lead to pivotal redirection, course correction, new ideas, new plans, and new motivations. However, for others, it will be the things that arrive in the chaos that suddenly forces people to pump the brakes and forces people to say, I can't do it. It's not that I don't want to do it. It's that so much is going on right now. And I need to focus on my family. I need to focus on my marriage. I needed to focus on my health. I need to focus on this treatment. I need to focus on something else. No matter how much I want this. And that is going to be what forces the separation and the tie. not the actual chaos, but more the imprint of frustration and the volatility. The other things that manifest and pop up and create delays and hinder the potential of growth. But it still instigates huge volumes of change. And mark my words, where you are right now, going into the 1st of December, for a lot of people is not where you're going to be by the time we get to the middle of April. It's not. The things that you are worried about, the things that you focus on, the things that you put your energy into, for a lot of people will suddenly feel minuscule because there's going to be so much pressure in another area to make something happen, to get something handled, to get something squashed. But what will happen afterwards, for a lot of people, is going to be the ability to pick back up on either what we desired to happen now that will not end up happening by the end of the month. We'll be able to pick back up on it come next spring, or we will have a whole new dynamic to focus on. And we will realize the thing that did not work right now was because it was not meant for us. We are in an obstacle course. We are going through a timeline shift, course correction into something new. Many of you are feeling that timeline shift. You are feeling the change. You're seeing the change. So many of us, like, we're having the dreams about it. We're dreaming about one timeline versus another, seeing an alternative life, an alternative possibility that is completely separate from where we've been. We're seeing huge change up here in our dreams, in the ethereal. And they feel real. But then you wake up and you're like, I don't even know where I was last night. I don't even know what that was. I don't even know why I'm so mad about it. But it was there. You felt it. You lived through it. You tasted it. And it's still setting an impression to how you're handling things as you go through your day to day. For a lot of people, we are in the midst of a timeline shift. And that's why the course correction is going to be so drastic. And some people are going to go into the 1st of the month thinking they've got one thing figured out. And very quickly, they're going to have a very big smack of reality saying, not quite what you thought it was, babe. Not that you were wrong. It's not that you were wrong. It's just not quite what you thought it was. Okay. When it comes to the month ahead forecast, it's a little bit different. I will talk about the transit, but sometimes I'll break away from the screen and you'll actually get a little bit more of my face time. The whole idea is I'm going to go through the major transits, and I do not go through it by hour like I do the weekly podcast episodes. So you haven't heard a month ahead before, just buckle in. And again, I go through all of the different major transits that are going to impact the entire month. And in this case, we're in December. So December 1st, we got 2 things that are going to go on this day. And I want to put both of them kind of in perspective right here. The new moon actually goes exact at 12:21 a.m. Central Standard Time. So quite literally right after midnight on December 1st, that is the new moon. I'm not going to go real heavy on the new moon in regards to this episode because one of the next episodes I'll do is the new moon in Sagittarius video. But what I do want to bring up is the fact that this is a new moon, pseudo squaring Saturn. And considering the entire first 7 days includes squares to Saturn, a lot of what starts to unfold throughout the entire first week of December is based off whatever starts to present itself immediately following this new moon. Just to be clear. Okay. The next day on December 2nd, roughly around 9 something in the morning, I'm going to bump this to 9:30. We get Venus going through her trine with Uranus. This is going to be the Monday following the new moon. The new moon's going to be on Sunday. A lot of people are going to go back to work following a holiday, especially here in the States. Boxing Day up in Canada. I don't know about European countries, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. I don't know about Australian companies. I'm not going to pretend like I do. Sorry, guys. But some people are going to go into work on Monday with a very unexpected vibration, unexpected situation, an unexpected decision or turnaround that starts to unfold. For some people, it will be exciting. For other people, it is going to be rather confusing, considering whenever Venus goes through the exact trine with Neptune, it will include a square between the moon. I'm sorry, Venus trine Uranus. It will include a square between the moon and Neptune. This 100% feels very blindsiding. There's going to be a lot of people just like, what did you say? What did you decide to do? I didn't know what you were talking about. And there will be an unexpected turn that, again, is how we start the month. And this is just one of those elements. We're going to keep this going. We're going to get to December 4th. Now, December 4th has a lot of things that are going to go on. I'm not going to move this by hour. I'm just going to go ahead and list the major transits that are happening. One, at 4:20 a.m., we get the exact opposition between Mercury and Jupiter. So you can see part of that right here. We're a little bit past that opposition, but this will be the second opposition. And again, I want people to go back and think about what you agreed to, what you were talking about, what meetings you had around November 18th. The first Mercury-Jupiter opposition happened on November 18th. And there can be things that were tied to the previous one that impact this one. There can be agreements and appointments that we set during that time that now impact this one. Jupiter was retrograde the entire time that we go through the Mercury and Sag timeline. But with Mercury being retrograde, hitting this opposition, it's almost like there's a change of plan. There's a change in the agreement. There is a modification to the agreement, but with the mutual reception, for a lot of people, it's not going to be detrimental. But again, it can still play into part of that unexpected vibration that we weren't necessarily anticipating. Now, there's extra layers to this. I'm not moving it by hour. I'm keeping it exactly the same because you can actually see this. At 10:20 a.m., we go through the exact square between the Sun and Saturn. Now, the Sun is hosting Mars, who's stationing, an agitated Mars. There can be agitation in the room. There can be a push for someone to accept responsibility because the Sun is in the higher authority, making the square to Saturn, therefore pushing Saturn, addressing Saturn, talking to the boss, the authority figure, the elder, pushing a form of responsibility. There can be something that comes from an authority figure that lets us know that a change in the plan has commenced, has occurred, has come through, because Jupiter, I circled Saturn, is hosting Saturn. Jupiter is hosting the Sun, and Jupiter is hosting that Mercury who's making the opposition. So a lot of the changes in the dynamic and how we're going into the new month, they are very much being overseen by a higher authority, by another person, pushed by another person, required by another person, by an authority figure, by the boss, by your parents. You can be the authority figure. You're not getting shit until XYZ. 1, 2, 3. Do it. I'm not changing my mind. This is my requirement. That's not what you said last week. I don't really care. Did you forget what you did this weekend? Did you forget how you behaved over the holiday? I don't really care. Changes are required. And there can be a lot of push and identification of, again, changes in authority, around authority, from an authority, about authority figures, about the bosses. Big shift right here, December 4th. And we're not completely done. There's one other aspect, not nearly as heavy, but still kind of flows into this angle. I'm not moving this by hour because I don't feel like I need to. And that is Venus will go through her exact sextile to Neptune. Some people will be very confused by the change in the hierarchy, by the requirements of what the authority figure needs. Others will feel really inspired. You're going to be my boss now? You're my favorite person here. This is amazing. This is great. This is what I wanted all along. Please be my boss. Please tell me what to do. Please do this thing. And some people will feel inspired with the Venus-Neptune sextile. They won't feel confused at all. They will be like, well, it's about damn time. This is amazing. This is great. I'm so happy. Some will be good with this. Others will be agitated. And again, given that the sun is hosting this stationing Mars, who's 2 days away from going retrograde, there is going to be some frustration in the air. So I'm not going to sugarcoat this in any way. But some will be inspired. Let's be clear about that. Okay. The next day, December 5th, we get the Mercury cazimi. Now that is going to happen later in the evening. So I'm going to just bump this a couple hours. 8:30. Here we go. Mercury, 14 degrees, 26 minutes. The sun is 14 degrees, 27 minutes. Mercury is coming into the heart of the sun. This cazimi is in a square to Saturn. Loose square, not exact. The sun has already had its exact the day before. Mercury will have its exact immediately following this. And this is still a Mercury-Sun opposition to Jupiter. And I will again remind everybody, Jupiter is in an area of the sky where he's already been back in August. Some of what we start to deal with, some of what is being clarified, some of what is rolling out has been well underway for months. Not everybody is getting brand new situations. Now, you might have new announcements from the higher ups, but come to find out, they've been talking since summer. They've been working on something since the summer. It ain't going to be that different. It ain't going to be that crazy. Not to everybody. For some people, it's going to be deafening crazy. For some, it will be very triggering. And for a lot more people, there's going to be a very big instant vibration that follows. So I'm going to bump this one day to December 6th. Two things going on immediately. Mercury will go through its exact square with Saturn. Like I said, the squares to Saturn are such a big dynamic. They were in August. They are again now. Both timelines was a Mercury retrograde. Both timelines included a Jupiter-Saturn square. And now we have to talk about Mars. During the exact square between Mercury and Saturn, that is when Mars is going to go retrograde. There will be so many dynamic changes that it will become very frustrating for another person. They will not be on board with certain things. They will not be okay with certain things. Certain types of people within positions of power, but also masculine ego being seen for the wrong reasons and immediately feeling judged by it. And there can be a lot of judgment to this week. Let's be absolutely clear about that too. Now, Mercury goes retrograde at 5:34 p.m. Central Standard Time. Mercury square to Saturn. That is the second one. The previous one happened on November 12th. So already we're 4 or 5 days into the month. And I've already told you 3 sets of prior dates that things can tie back to. August 14th to 20th. Go back and look. November 18th and November 12th. I would just look at the whole range between the two, the 12th and the 18th. Who were you talking to? Who were you meeting with? What did you do? Where did you go? All through those timelines, because they're both impacting parts of what's going on right here and a part of what is being disrupted. Whether it is good disruption or negative disruption, very different conversation. But they're both playing into this. Okay. And the thing is, now we got to get into the 7th. And now I'm not going to bump this by day. I got to bump this by hour. There's another date I need to throw in now. And that is actually going to take us back to February. Between February 16th, February 12th and 17th. The exact transit I'm thinking of is the 16th. And I want to take everybody back to the last time Pluto was at 0 degrees of Aquarius. On January 19th, 20th, Sun-Pluto conjunction, 29 degrees of Capricorn. And then they both moved into Aquarius, 0 degrees together. They moved together from the 19th to the 20th. Boom, Pluto at 0 degrees. And for the next 4 weeks, we had Mercury conjoin Pluto at 0 degrees. Mars conjoined Pluto at 0 degrees. That was Valentine's Day. February 16th, Venus conjoined Pluto at 0 degrees. There can be things that tie back to the beginning of the year that are also impacting the Mars retrograde. I said this back then. I warned about that back then, to be very aware of what you're doing, who you're talking to, what the dynamics are whenever it comes to this timeline. Oh, that's not what I want to do there. Okay. There are things from that timeline that are coming into the fold, that are coming into the circle. And some of what happened back in February could have been very, very minor. I will be absolutely honest about this. What I had going on in February was super minor in comparison to what it's turned into since then. So some of the most minute, small things that have happened since the beginning of the year can be a part of the buildup as to what we're falling into right at the start of the Mars retrograde. Okay. Now, Venus will conjoin Pluto at 0 degrees. This is not the first time it's happened. In fact, it is the second time. So I'm giving you more previous dates to tie into what's coming through at this point, where the disruptions are at this point. Not only do we have the Venus-Pluto conjunction, but we also have the full opposition between the Sun and Jupiter, and that actually goes exact in the afternoon around 3 o'clock. So I got this at 2:30. Here's Jupiter, 16 degrees, 15 minutes. Here's the Sun, 16 degrees, 14 minutes. There is something coming to light in the first 10 days of December. Something that is coming to the surface, something that is going to be very, very triggering with the Venus-Pluto conjunction, something that is going to be deeply transformative with the Venus-Pluto conjunction, and yet very deeply disruptive, volatile, chaotic, course correction, frustrating energy, because Mars is now retrograde. The new energy can be disruptive. The newer decisions about the old dynamic is likely going to be a part of the disruption. And again, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to act out and suddenly be seen for the wrong reasons. Okay. Oh, And the other thing that happens, I'm going to bump this just a few more hours. At 5:43 p.m. Central Standard Time, so I'm just bumping this to 6:30, Neptune goes direct. The disruption from the other side is so disruptive that there's no more confusion. There's no more hidden details. Everything is coming into focus. Everything is coming into light. And for a lot of people, again, there's things tied to the bosses, the authority figures, the people in charge that are creating the disruption, that have forced the hand of certain disruptions. And they're going to have to deal with immediate follow-up, follow-through, immediate reactions that they're not planning on, that they're not anticipating. Okay. Now, between the 7th and a few days afterwards, I'm not going to say that it's calmer. I'm just saying that the intensity of the transits all happen in those first few days. And then it's like everything is a ripple effect. Everything is just kind of like, and this is where we are now. And this is what we're dealing with. And this is what we're still reacting to and acting upon. This is where our mindset is. Now, on December 12th, we get the opposition between Mars, you got Mars, 5 degrees, 58 minutes, and Venus, 5 degrees and 54 minutes. So we have some level of opposition. And again, the masculine, Mars, the god of war, Mars, being retrograde, not being seen for the right reasons, being seen for taking actions he shouldn't be taking, being seen in a different light, being seen in a way that we no longer trust, that we no longer agree with. Because remember, Mars being retrograde, Venus is ready to go her own way. Venus is taking on her own direction. Venus has her own ideas, her own mindset. You do you, boo-boo. I don't have to play this game. I don't have to fall onto this game anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't have to go in this direction. I'm going to just do me. We are just going to do what we need to do. We are just going to take this direction. You're not in charge. You're not the boss. You can't hurt me. You can't do anything to me. And this is happening in the fixed signs. Not only that, over the course of the day, over the course of the overnight hours going into this, the moon makes a square to Venus and Mars. And it too is in a fixed sign. So there's a lot of long-term energy, long game energy that is playing out right here. And again, a lot of disruption. The opposition between Venus and Mars that goes most exact around 4:45 a.m. Central Standard Time. There will be other people that are being influenced and a part of it. And all of it is starting to level out some final rounds of negotiations in some way because of the condition of Mercury. Mercury is starting to slow down. And over the next few days, Mercury will end up turning direct. But as he's starting to slow down, he's also entering a trine to Mars. But the problem is these two are never going to go exact. So there's going to be some people that they're trying to like get some negotiations going. They're trying to make something happen. And there's going to be somebody that does not agree, that does not want to do it, that won't do something, that is going to do things to create disruption. They're going to show their ass a little bit before we have any possibility of a turnaround, of a change, of a shift. And that's going to start to come through the Venus-Pluto opposition. I'm sorry, Venus-Pluto, the Venus-Mars opposition that we're in. And throughout the next week or so that's going to follow. So again, I'm on the 12th. The next day on the 13th, we've got the exact sextile between Mercury and Venus that actually goes the most exact around 1:45 in the morning. I don't need to bump it just for you to see that. This is really close right here. Hey, I had this meeting. It's like, yeah, I know they didn't agree to what you said. I'm going to work on it a little bit more. Mercury stationing direct. Mercury trying to come to terms with something with Mars, trying to reach an agreement, trying to make something happen. But ultimately, it's very likely not going to happen. Okay. Oh, we get to the 15th. And on the 15th, right around 3:01 a.m., I got this at 3:30, so it's still super close. This is the full moon in Gemini. This is the first thing that happens on the 15th. I'm going to fast forward it to the second thing, and then I'm going to tie them together. So we get the full moon in Mercury's sign. And about 12 hours later, so I'm just bumping this. Oh, I went to day. Hold on. By hour. And about 12 hours later, right around 3:30 in the afternoon, Mercury, the ruler of said full moon, is going to go direct. We go into a mercurial full moon, reaching some kind of peak, reaching some type of conclusion that immediately sets for a course correction whenever it comes to Mercury. And what Mercury has been doing in Sagittarius over the course of the retrograde. We're turning something around. We're reaching some level of a peak, of an adjustment, of a conclusion. But it doesn't necessarily mean the conclusion with Mars. It could also mean like, I made an offer, I attempted something, I tried to make the best of the situation, I tried to extend an olive branch, I tried to do something. And no matter what I did, it just wasn't going to work. They didn't want to listen. They didn't care. They just wanted to be however they wanted to be. They wanted to act however they wanted to act. They did not want to see reason because all they wanted to do was tell everybody how they have done wrong. How they have been done wrong. I said that backwards. And I could see little things towards like smear campaigns that start to kick up. Whether they're true or not, very different conversation. But somebody being so agitated that suddenly they want to tell everybody's secrets. They got so much to say. They just want to let everybody know. And the rest of December can have elements of exactly that. You want to burn bridges with me. You want to hurt my feelings. You want to do this stuff against me. Go ahead and try. But I'm going to get you first. Or I'm going to get you too. And there's something about that just speaks volumes through this energy. Okay. So moving this back in. December 15th, full moon in Gemini. Mercury turns direct, immediately following a full moon in Mercury's sign. We're coming to some type of peak in the negotiations, peak in the revising, the revamping, the restructure, the whatever we've been dealing with whenever it comes to the Mercury retrograde aspect. And now we're putting something forward into motion. Maybe not all in the immediate, because Mercury needs time to get unbusy. But the whole idea is that we've got some full steam ahead energy on another side. And we're just going to let somebody else go. We're just going to deal with whatever the aftermath is, whatever the cause is, whatever the frustration is. We're just going to deal with it however we need to once it hits. Okay. Bumping this now to December 18th. Now, on the days following the full moon, following Mercury turning direct, there's going to be like a lag. People are going to be laggy a little bit. Some are going to be inspired, but others are just going to be like, everything is dragging. And I don't know why everything is dragging. I do. we got the sun coming into a square to Neptune. And this actually goes exact early morning on the 18th, is around 8:15 a.m. Central Standard Time. We get this exact square between the sun and Neptune. Now, Neptune is newly direct. The sun is in the higher authority. The sun is also being hosted by Jupiter just as much as Neptune is. So there's something about being inspired in a lot of ways with the sun squared Neptune, but also discoveries of what was previously shadowed, clouded, unknown, previous fraud, previous lies, previous deception. The sun is still hosting Mars. And sometimes the things that are being revealed, exposed for the wrong reasons, Mars retrograde in Leo, you don't know the depths of which somebody else is going to go. You don't know the depths of the secret someone else might have on you. We don't know the amount of lies somebody is willing to tell just because you piss them off. But we can learn about it during the Sun-Neptune square. And if that is in fact what happens, learning about a lie, learning about fraud, learning about something that was previously not known, has now been exposed, that can have a heavy hand in what we deal with right around Christmas. And I'll make more sense of that here in just a minute. Okay. On the 19th, we get a trine between Venus and Jupiter. Sorry, getting my stuff mixed up. So I got this December 19th, about 3:30 in the afternoon. Here's Venus, 14 degrees, 24 minutes. Here is Jupiter, 14 degrees, 39 minutes. It's pretty close. You can see it right there. It actually goes more exact in the evening time, around 8:20 p.m. This is not a heavy transit. This is not a bad transit. In a lot of ways, it's a very understanding transit. There is information, again, long-term decisions that are playing into the energy, but long-term decisions that are in the midst of change. Venus trying Jupiter, with Jupiter being an immutable sign. Well, this is how we did it in the past. Well, the way we did in the past might not be working. We might need to evolve. We might need to take it up a notch. We might need to grow up a little bit. Well, we're not going to make all the changes all at once. That's fair. Let's talk about it. Let's create a meeting. Let's table it. Or let's spend the next few weeks working on a different plan, different options, and different forms of responsibility. This is going to be a very big part of what we start to deal with once the sun goes into Capricorn. Speaking of that, that's the next thing that happens. Specifically, on December 21st at 3:21 a.m. Central Standard Time, I got it at 3:30. It's fine. Here's the sun. Boom. 0 degrees of Capricorn. The sun is now in Saturn's sign. Now, the sun's not necessarily happy in Saturn's sign, but I still want to put emphasis as to what we're looking at. The sun is still hosting Mars. And if Mars has in fact been doing exactly what I said has been going on, volatile actions, volatile reactions, volatile changes, sudden disruptions, sudden disturbance, pivotal change or chaotic change, however it's been going for you, for a little while, we're going to feel like super great about it. It's like, yeah, everything's going to be great. And then a couple things are going to hit and be like, I thought it was going to be easier. Suddenly everything's starting to feel way harder. And whenever we start to get into the sun being in Capricorn, there's going to be a lot more conversations in regards to levels of responsibility and who's taking on what, who's dealing with what, identifying, again, new people in positions of power and understanding their power dynamic, their way of thinking, their way of doing things, and the way they handle responsibility. And some will not immediately handle new forms of responsibility well. some people will not agree with who their new boss is. They're not going to be happy about it. And it's going to, again, force for some splits to start to occur throughout the rest of December and even going into the first few weeks of January. We have splits that are starting to occur. Okay. December 24th, Christmas Eve. We get our second square between Saturn and Jupiter. Now, again, there will be 3 of these in total. 2 between Pisces and Gemini. This is the second one between Pisces and Gemini. The third one will not occur for 6 more months after this. And that is going to occur at the start of Aries and Cancer, at the start of other signs, at the start of other dynamics, at the start of a whole new wave of energy. The first 2 squares being in the mutable signs, one that occurred exact on August 19th. Remember what I said at the beginning of the episode, going back to the week between August 14th and August 20th? No. Mars square Jupiter was exact on August 19th. That was the first one. Saturn was retrograde. Jupiter was direct. This one's a little bit different. Saturn is direct and Jupiter is retrograde. And there's going to be a lot of situations where someone that was previously gung-ho about one action, about one idea, about one potential, got humbled. And there'll be a lot of people that have certain people coming back around at the end of the year. Going back to an old boss, going back to someone that we previously trusted, that we previously had, love in, that we previously worked for, needing guidance, needing assistance, needing approvals. New approval to an old dynamic, new insight to the old situation. And not only do we have the square between Jupiter and Saturn right here, but we also get Mercury. And this is really interesting because I see a couple things going on here. December 24th, Jupiter square Saturn. This will be very interesting for the mutable signs that are really going through like 10th, 1st, 4th, 7th, because there's going to be a lot of mutable signs. So Pisces risings, Gemini risings, Sagittarius risings, Virgo risings that are having massive changes in regards to home life and family and elders. Now, it doesn't mean that you could only deal with elders if that's your sign. It's just there's a lot of weight going on here. But in the days that follow, Mercury is going to get involved. So on December 26th, 2 days later, Mercury makes its third and final opposition to Jupiter. Again, 2 previous dates, November 18th and December 4th. Not only that, Mercury is going to make its square to Saturn. Now, that's actually going to go exact on the 27th. I'm going to round all of these days together. That's why I'm giving all this up front. Right after midnight, going into the 27th, Mercury will square Saturn for the third and final time. And that goes back to either November 12th or December 6th, when Mercury gets involved and creates a T-square. Looks like this, T-square. By going back in another direction, by going back to an old way of thinking, by going back to a former superior, by going back to tradition, by going back to a family member, by going back in a certain direction, there can be healing in the Jupiter square. There can be a revision. And that revision also will have an outside influence. If you look at this in the family dynamic and the fact that it's the holidays, so let's have a couple Hallmark ideas, Hallmark moments. There will be some people that end up having to go back home for the holidays for reasons they did not anticipate. And most likely it's going to be based off the condition of an elder. Something's going on with the elder. Somebody's being forced into some level of responsibility, forced to take on some additional role. Or if you are the person that has been forced to be responsible already, somebody's going to try to come back into the picture and be like, look, I know you have been the one taking care of grandpa this entire time and I haven't really helped, but I'm here now. And you got to figure out how you want to address that, how you want to conversate about that. But given that T square with Mercury, not only will you be like, I'm coming back over to help you with grandpa, and here's your nephew that you knew nothing about. Here's your grandchild that you knew nothing about. Here's my significant other that you knew nothing about. There can be an extra element whenever it comes to Mercury. Or it will be the mercurial person that brings people back around, that makes people see the light, that makes people reunite right around the holidays. I tricked you to come to my house because I knew she was coming too. He was coming too. Now y'all can sit your asses down to talk. Now, those transits are exact over the course of a 4-day period. The human effect is they can play out at any time around the holidays. That's why I'm adding that little cliche aspect to it. Some people, if we're looking at just going into that element of the position of power, will be having some very key conversations, some final rounds of dynamic, some final rounds of agreement that are going to come through throughout the rest of the year that will be implemented at the start of the new year, the start of January. And that comes through based off of another dynamic that really starts to unfold at the end of December, but does not happen exact until January. And that is right around Christmas Eve. I know I got on the 26th, but it's close enough. Mars is going to re-enter its opposition to Pluto. Now, we will feel that the most exact between December 24th and January 11th, but the actual exact transit will happen on January 3rd. And that activity, that activation, again, goes back to prior dynamics. And I'll cover that a little bit more in the closing because we're really close to that. So let's continue. Oh, Mercury gets the mix here. So we got right here, Mercury in the opposition to Jupiter. We get to the 27th. Mercury goes through that square with Saturn. You can see that right there. Jupiter's still in the square with Saturn. There's our little hallmark conversation I was just talking about. On December 28th, right after midnight, we go through an exact square between Venus and Uranus. And you can see it exact right here at 1:30. Here's Venus, 23 degrees, 43 minutes. Here's Uranus, 23 degrees, 43 minutes. Now, what's interesting is these two are in mutual reception. And they are coming to an agreement. They have an understanding. Just like Mercury and Jupiter have been in mutual reception, Venus and Uranus enter mutual reception once Venus goes into Aquarius. And when they reach this square, we can have some unexpected turnarounds based off of understanding where the other person is seeing something, how the other person came to terms with something, how something came to light. We can have some exciting agreements, some exciting turnarounds, some excited happenings. And they might not have anything to do with the rest. Some of us could be just doing some exciting things like, let's go out and do something. Everybody's back in town. Everybody's here. Let's go try to do something fun and exciting. And that could be, again, a part of the December 27th, 28th timeframe. And then we end the month in a new moon. That's how we end the month, December 30th. We start the month in a new moon in Sag. We end the month with the new moon in Capricorn. Happens on the 30th around 4:30 in the afternoon. There we go. 4:30, new moon in Capricorn, a new moon in Saturn sign. And Saturn had just had that square with Jupiter, the T square with Mercury and Jupiter. Again, we're coming to terms with something in regards to things with an authority figure, certain levels of responsibility, a dynamic around certain responsibilities, shifts in power, and how we're going to handle something or someone that we aren't wanting to be connected with anymore, that we're not going to be connected with anymore. Things are separating. And whether we are separating with something at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, there's something in turning and again separating. Because again, all throughout the rest of the year, we're going through this opposition of Mars and Pluto. And that's going to be their second opposition. And I said I would cover this part a little bit more in the closing. We will start the month in that new moon in Sag, and it's going to feel very hopeful, very confident. There's a very much of a difference in the vibration between moon in Sag, the new moon in Sag, and that new moon in Capricorn. And once we get into a lot more of those Capricorn transits, there is going to be a lot of humbling going on. A lot of weight, a lot of responsibility, a lot of things coming into focus. And some of those focuses are going to be very frustrating. The things that put that into focus can be very frustrating and very volatile. And now I want to talk about that Mars-Pluto opposition. Because the human effect is part of that, will be a part of the dynamic that comes from the end of the month volatility. But again, it's not the first one. It's the second one. The first one happened right around the election. I like to give physical events to remind everybody. It happened around November 3rd. And it happened at that 29-degree mark of Capricorn and Cancer. And there's a lot of triggering to that energy. A lot of triggering in regards to something that needed to come to a close. Something that was coming to an end. Something that was going to finally be overcome. But simultaneously, even though that happened at the 29-degree mark of one set of signs, it was the first in the series of 3. So something had to come to a close, something had to be judged, something had to come to terms with, that's leading into a long-term arrangement, a long-term effect that cannot be undone. Sometimes once you say certain things to people, when you do certain things with certain people, the situation cannot be undone. And some people will try to do some undoing. Again, showing their ass. But the more they show their ass, the more they're confirming for the other side, no, this isn't right. This isn't a good idea. Some of us made new connections, new friends, new clients, new partnerships. We started to make certain connections around the beginning of November that were playing into the closeout of something, the dismissal of something. And as we then go forward, we're holding people accountable, because sometimes people just threaten breakups. Well, if you do this, I'm leaving. Goodbye. And I'm not coming back. Goodbye. And there's nothing you're going to say. Bye. When Mars hits that second opposition to Pluto, there will be some people that try to come back around. They thought it was going to go one way, and they're going to try to come back around. They're going to try to change their mind. They're going to try to change something. And we're going to have some final little brush where one person says, no, not happening. There will be some final things that start to come to a close. Things that we've been trying to get off of the ground since, again, the beginning of November. Some people try to start doing things at the beginning of November, and those will not continue. Instead, there's been a change of plans, and the idea is to go in this other direction. There are separations that are going to start to become a very big dynamic to the end of the year. For some people, this is going to have to do with companies. Because we merged, certain positions are going to start to get, what's the word? Dismissed, downsized. We're going to start cleaning house. And that's not going to be something that is anticipated. But you don't need 2 COOs. You don't need 2 sets of district managers. You don't need all of this. You have to start to streamline it. And you either reallocate people to new positions or you cut the excess weight. And whether you are reallocated going into the new year or you're cut off weight by the end of the year, there is going to be some separations in the vibration. 2 different elements, 2 different dynamics. Now, the negative aspect to Mercury and Leo is that there can be also things that impact people's blood. And now this takes me into, again, elements of health. All those squares to Saturn and Jupiter, people can have a lot of things that go wrong in their health, specifically in regards to like stress and hypertension, things along these areas. And there could be sudden things that impact the body and our blood pressure, or with Mercury's elements, again, going back to staying more focused on the beginning of the month during the Mercury retrograde, but Mercury's in detriment the whole time. Your intestinal health, your lungs, anything on your body in duality, Mercury has rulership over, either dominant rulership or co-rulership. But he also rules a lot of the intestines, and Jupiter rules the liver. And there can be something around the health of certain people that, again, changes certain responsibilities to where some people are going to get to the end of December going, I love this job. I love what's happening. I love all of the changes, but I can't be a part of them because I have to go handle something else. I have to go take care of someone else. Now, next week, I'm going to do a Mars retrograde video. And I will put more emphasis in describing why that is, because a lot of that has to do with what is going to be the dynamic once Mars goes back into Cancer. And I want to put all that together in one loop. So there will be some repetitiveness in certain ways, but there will be further explanation as to why I'm saying there's going to be people that have to go back into situations to go care for something or someone. And a lot of that's going to be very unplanned, chaotic disruption. Mars disruption is either pivotal or chaotic, but when it comes to retrograde times, I said it earlier, about 75% chaotic. Therefore, shit ain't going to plan. Well, we're going to see that in December. Whether that has to do with company changes and you get downsized, or you get your job reallocated, whether that has to do with you finding out your mother-in-law's having an issue with something in her health, and all of a sudden, like, everybody needs to adjust their routine because we have to start taking care of someone. Whatever it is, there is disruptions that are coming that are not planned. They're not. But they are part of the course correction and the timeline shift that we are going through to put us into our new levels of alignment that will become far more in focus late next spring. Okay. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Hit me up with questions. Hit me up with concerns. If you're wanting to book a reading with me, my contact information is listed in the description of every single episode. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.